A wedding is supposed to be a testament to order, a carefully constructed ritual to ward off the chaos of the world. But what happens when the chaos isn't outside the walls? What happens when it's on the guest list? The internet is a vast confession booth, and Reddit is its darkest chapel. People go there to unburden themselves of stories they can't tell anywhere else. Stories of days that were meant to be perfect, but instead became monuments to human failure. Tonight, we are not just telling stories, we are examining evidence. 3 specimens of wedding disasters, pulled from the digital ether, that reveal the terrifying truth. The line between I do and I am done is thinner than a veil. Our first case comes from a user who worked as a wedding caterer for over a decade. He thought he had seen it all. He was wrong. The wedding was a classic powder keg. 2 wealthy, arrogant families who hated each other, united only by their children's baffling love. The tension was thick enough to curdle the champagne. The trouble began, as it so often does, with the toasts. The father of the groom, a man with a cruel smile, stood up. He didn't toast the happy couple. He toasted to finally getting his son a trust fund with a prettier name on it. The bride's family was silent, a cold, dangerous silence. You see, the worst disasters don't start with a bang. They start with a single, perfectly aimed word. That word was the spark. The fuel was the open bar. Now, let me ask you a question. In a room full of people wearing their best clothes, pretending to be their best selves, how long does it take for the masks to come off? The answer is about 45 minutes. It started when the bride's uncle threw a shrimp at the groom's father. It ended with the bride, her $1 million dress stained with wine and hollandaise sauce, standing on a table and screaming at her new husband, who was locked in a headlock with his own cousin. The wedding cake was used as ammunition. The floral arrangements became weapons. The caterer said he and his staff just stopped. They stood against the wall and watched civilization crumble over a disagreement about canapés and inheritance. The real horror wasn't the chaos. It was how quickly it arrived, how easily the fine veneer of society was peeled back to reveal the screaming apes underneath. That first story was about social collapse. This next specimen is more intimate. It's a puzzle of psychological horror, a story about a face you think you know. It comes from a wedding photographer. The wedding was small, almost secretive. The bride was a nervous, bird-like woman. The groom was handsome, charming, but quiet. The photographer noticed something odd during the ceremony. The groom's family, or the people who were supposed to be his family, seemed to be keeping their distance. Their smiles were strained, like actors in a poorly rehearsed play. He shrugged it off. His job was to capture the happiness, real or not. He took hundreds of photos, the couple, kissing, cutting the cake, the first dance. It was all perfect. Weeks later, the photographer was editing the photos when he got a strange call from the bride's mother. She sounded frantic. She asked him to send over one specific picture, a candid shot of the groom talking to an old man who was a distant relative. He sent it. An hour later, she called back, weeping. "That's not him," she whispered. "Who is that in the picture?" The family had done some digging. The old man in the photo had shown it to some friends, who had then shown it to others. The truth came out, piece by painful piece. The man the bride had married was not who he said he was. He was a con artist. The real groom, her fiancé of 2 years, had allegedly run off to Europe a month before the wedding, sending texts and emails breaking it off. But he hadn't. This man, this stranger with a charming smile, had somehow intercepted him. He had stolen his identity, drained his bank accounts, and showed up to marry his fiancée, likely to gain access to her family's wealth. The people posing as his family were hired actors. The bride had married a ghost, a complete stranger. The photograph wasn't a memory of a happy day. It was evidence from the scene of a crime. We've seen social collapse and identity theft. Our final exhibit is a quieter, more chilling affair. It's a classic Agatha Christie setup. A picture-perfect wedding in the countryside, a web of family secrets, and a hint of poison. The story is told by a cousin of the bride. The bride, Amelia, was marrying into an old money family. Her new mother-in-law, a woman named Beatrice, was the classic matriarch, cold, controlling, and deeply unhappy that her son was marrying what she called new common stock. Beatrice made her disapproval known through 1,000 tiny cuts, criticizing the dress, the venue, the choice of hymns. The day of the wedding, Beatrice was a portrait of passive aggression, smiling for the cameras but whispering criticisms to anyone who would listen. Then came the cake cutting. It was an almond-flavored cake, the bride's favorite. The couple took the first bite. It was a lovely moment. And then slices were passed around to the guests. The narrator, our cousin, took a bite. It was delicious, but there was a strange, slightly bitter aftertaste. He saw a few other guests make a similar face. And that's when the first guest, the bride's father, collapsed. Chaos erupted. Sirens, paramedics. It wasn't a fatal dose for most, but over a dozen guests became violently ill. The culprit was cyanide, which, in small doses, mimics severe food poisoning, and it famously smells of bitter almonds. The investigation was a real-life murder mystery. Who would do this? An ex-lover? A business rival? Number. The truth, as it often is, was far more domestic. It was Beatrice, the mother-in-law. She hadn't intended to kill anyone just to ruin the day, to create a scandal so profound it would taint the marriage forever. She had bribed a member of the catering staff to add a special almond extract to the frosting. Her motive wasn't passion. It was pride. She couldn't stand to see her perfect family name sullied by a woman she deemed unworthy. So she decided to poison the celebration itself. A food fight. A stolen identity. A poisoned cake. These aren't just crazy wedding stories from Reddit. They are parables. They remind us that the most important vows we take aren't the ones we say out loud, but the ones we keep in silence. The ritual of a wedding doesn't ward off chaos. It just puts a roof over it. It gathers all your greatest loves and darkest secrets into a single room, and hopes they behave. Sometimes they don't.